I think we can afford to be a bit more creative and bold in our choices in terms of what we career wise. And to be honest, we think that having your own business is riskier and you can't earn as much doing freelance work and so on. And that's not necessarily true. So I think we need to sort of reframe and think that actually maybe we can have both.
Welcome to the show. I'm Vivian So of joliepagel.com, and this is my podcast, This is for You. Today's guest is Anna Lundberg. She is the founder of One Step Outside, where she helps people around the world build businesses and create a lifestyle that allows them an unimagined sense of freedom, flexibility, and fulfillment. Since leaving her corporate job in 2013, she's now reimagining what success looks like, and she's passionate about inspiring and supporting others to do the same. She is the host of the Reimagining Success podcast and author of Leaving the Corporate 9-to-5: Stories from People Who've Done It and How You Can Too. In this episode, we're talking about personal growth, meaningful work, overcoming fear, prioritizing your goals, and creating a lifestyle of freedom and flexibility. You can subscribe and follow Anna on her podcast at reimaginingsuccesspodcast.com, or you can follow her on Instagram at Anna Lundberg or on her Facebook group, One Step Outside. Don't forget to check out her website, onestepoutside.com. I'll link her contact and website info on my blog and show notes, which you can find at joliepagel.com. So thank you, Anna, for coming on the show. I've listened to every episode of your podcast and I've really enjoyed it. There are lots of great advice on building business, visual, personal growth and success, and personal anecdotes. So I would like to know a little bit more about your background and life. You're based in London, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yes. And have you lived there most of your life, or is this a new location for you?
Both. So my parents are actually Swedish, but I was born here in England. I did primary and secondary school here, university. I then moved to Switzerland, Geneva, to do my master's degree, and I ended up getting a job there and stayed for 9 years in total until 2013. And that's actually when I quit my job. So that's when I left Switzerland. And I was a little bit in London, a little bit nomadic, as they call it now, traveling all around the world. And then recently, I've come back to London. So I fell in love with an Englishman who has a job in London. And we've just bought a flat a couple of months ago.
Oh, well,
so now I'm back in London. Thank you.
Yeah, that's fun. So what was your first job out of university?
Yes, my first sort of real job was, I did, so first I should say I studied at my master's, I studied international relations. So I wanted to work at the United Nations. So I did quite a few unpaid internships with the UN and different NGOs, non-governmental organizations. But my first paid job was in marketing at Procter & Gamble, so big American multinational corporation in Geneva. And that was a brand management role that I then, got promoted through and so on for the next sort of 7 years or so.
Oh, well, how is Procter & Gamble? Like our products, every product I have is probably from Procter & Gamble.
Yeah, I always tell people, turn the products around in your bathroom and it'll be Unilever, Johnson & Johnson, or Procter & Gamble. So, to be honest, I very naively didn't know very much about it because I hadn't studied marketing and business and I didn't really know what I was letting myself in for. But it was a fantastic company. They really focused on the people, as they called it at the time, and loads of training, fantastic colleagues to work with. And I really enjoyed it. So I learned a lot, and it's really been a massive help actually since leaving, ironically, because I've had a really great network, and I think the company just is very well renowned and well recognized for being great at marketing. So that's really helped since I've left as well.
After Procter & Gamble, what was your next career?
Well, that's where I went a bit rogue. So 2013 is when I quit my job, and I didn't really have an idea of what I was going to do. But I left. I guess I took a leap of faith. I initially, again, was traveling quite a bit and going to some interviews for different jobs. And I thought maybe I can do a marketing job in a different company or in a different country. But actually then ended up starting my marketing consultancy. But it wasn't so straightforward because that's what I did. That was the first thing I did. And then I did a couple of years of working essentially sort of freelance on a contracting basis. So I would go into a client's office. I'd work almost as an employee, but just a bit more free. obviously a bit more on my own terms, my own rates and things, but I'd still work, in the client's office and long hours and quite much longer than I'd intended, I guess. Often I'd come in for a few weeks and then they'd want me to stay for months, which is nice, but obviously meant then that it was getting a bit close to having a proper job. So and I would travel in between the contracts, but after a couple of years, I actually sort of decided to change the way I was working. So I said no to those big contracts, and I tried to take the business on the road with me. So I tried to make it location independent, and that's when I also discovered coaching, and I started writing more, and then that's kind of grown into what I do now, which is a combination of the consulting that I did before and the coaching, which is new.
And did you start your business just so that you want it, so you can have more free time?
Yes, it was. Again, I guess I didn't really know what I was after when I left Procter and Gamble. It was more that I knew I was ready to do something else, and I was ready to explore, and I had some vague idea of maybe starting a business, but I have to admit, looking back, that I had no idea what that meant or what that could look like. So, I think that I always talk about freedom, flexibility, and fulfillment. I think those are the key words. So, not having a boss looking over your every move, having flexible working hours, being able to work from home, choosing the the projects that you work on, and then also doing more meaningful work. I just felt, having studied politics and philosophy and development, I'd ended up selling perfume in Europe and the US and so on. It just felt like a bit of a disconnect for me. So for me, I was after, that freedom and flexibility in terms of the work I was doing and when I was doing it and where, and then also work that had more meaning and purpose, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, what were your emotions you went through when you left Procter and Gamble to start your own consulting company?
Well, there's definitely a lot of fear and uncertainty. Like I said, I don't know if I said that, but before I quit, actually, I asked for a sabbatical, 3 months to travel.
Mm-hmm.
In theory, then I would have come back to a different role. But actually, halfway through that, that's when they started calling me from work, and they were like, "Are you interested in this role? Do you want to do that?" And I just thought, no, this is not what I want to do. So that's when I took the step to actually quit the job. I thought that if I come back to my comfort zone back in Geneva with my friends and colleagues and so on, it'll be very easy just to get sucked into the same life that I had before and work. So that was a really difficult decision, but it was also the best one I ever made. So it's one of those funny ones that I always say to people, scary and exciting tend to come together, because it was the first time in a long time, if ever, I'd made a decision really based on my intuition. A lot of the logic didn't really make sense. Obviously, friends and family are like, but you don't have a job to go to. Isn't it better to wait until you find something else? And obviously, I had all those insecurities too. So fear of failure, fear of it not working, fear of making the wrong decision and then ruining my career forever, fear of never getting money and so on. So there was a lot of fear. That was the biggest emotion. But also, obviously, again, scary and exciting come together. So I was, especially while I was traveling, obviously my horizons were completely opened up. I was like, wow, there are so many possibilities. I was reminded of my love of writing and travel and adventure and meeting people, and it just kind of broadened my perspective on what could be possible. So yeah, those are the two overarching emotions, I think, the massive fear, but also this massive sense of potential and possibility and excitement.
Yeah, we can all relate to that. That is very relatable to me because I was laid off in 2009 from an airline company. And so thereafter, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And so there definitely was a lot of fear in what to do next because I was lost.
Yeah, and it's
But
interesting
yeah.
that you say no, being made redundant, being laid off is one of the key drivers and obviously like a trigger to force you
Mhm.
into making a decision that maybe you would have wanted to do anyway. It's just that because we're so afraid, we're stuck in our comfort zones, we can't change. And actually, a lot of people I work with have had exactly that. Either they've been made redundant or ironically, they've been promoted and they realize actually, hang on, this is not, what I wanted either. So yeah, so it's interesting that you say that, and great that you then take that as an opportunity rather than something that's a negative thing. Although of course it's a difficult thing to go through.
Yes, it is very difficult. Mine is a little bit more interesting because I didn't really go into the workforce until like a real workforce until like 4 years later.
Okay.
But yeah, what I did was I experimented. I started my blog, and then I also decided to be a professional ballroom dance teacher.
Amazing. And
So, but
that
yeah.
exploration is so important, and having the freedom. There are so few moments generally in life. I took a gap year after school before university. Some people take a year off to travel. Potentially if you're going to have children, so it can be harder when you're older and you have a house and whatever. So I think anyone who has that opportunity to see it as opportunity, as you said, to do something you'd love to do something really random, to travel, to follow your passion, I think it's so powerful.
Yeah. And so during your sabbatical, what is one step you took to move into your current profession?
Well, in a way, the sabbatical itself was one step because it was, a step that I took within a bit of a comfortable situation that I didn't quit completely. So that in itself was a step. And to be honest, during the trip, I was mostly reading and talking to people, and exploring and imagining. So again, picking up on what you said in terms of the exploration, I think that's so critical. We tend to rush into, oh, what should the business model be, and what course should I take, and what's the next step, and so on. And actually giving ourselves a bit of a break to take a step back, to reflect, to really think about what we want is really critical. So for me, that was a massive piece, and it took, to be honest, months, if not years. And as I said, I initially started the consulting, and then I broke away from that, and so it evolves as we go as well. It's not like you can suddenly from one day to the next go from corporate marketing job to running your own dream business somewhere else in the world. So I think it's many little steps.
And how long ago did you start your consulting company?
So I left the Procter and Gamble job in 2013, and officially I incorporated the consultancy on 11th of February, and then the coaching company was a couple of years after that. So yeah, it's been I still operate officially under the digital marketing consultancy is sort of the umbrella, which is registered officially with the authorities and so on. But then I have my one step outside coaching, which is the last 3 years or so.
And we all need to network to build a clientele. So how do you go about building your network? And is it mostly online, or are you meeting people in person?
Well, it's so interesting. I mean, I think building your network sounds uncomfortable to most of us, and I've certainly never thought of myself as being good at networking. I think when I started, I wasn't so much building a network as going out to meet people, and obviously it's sort of the same thing, but I wasn't being as intentional. I wasn't thinking, oh, I need to network to build my business. It was just like, I need to meet people who are going through the same, fear and excitement that I'm going through, who can help me, who can support me, who can encourage me. So one of the biggest things I did was, going to events, and I joined quite a few adventure groups and things, and did some big trips like paddleboarding and kayaking and all sorts of things. And that was quite fun to, again, get out of my physical comfort zone and to explore and so on. And funnily enough, it was the people I met that was most important. The actual content on like any course or the presentation I went to was pretty forgettable, but it was always around meeting the people who, yeah, again, shared. The first event I went to after I quit, it was the first time I'd met other people who were like in successful corporate jobs, and yet they felt there was something more, I want to do something different. I'm not yet sure what, and excited about that. So that was a huge step for me to meet other people who felt the same way as me. And then I have to say, more recently, or at least the last few years, it's been more online because I'm fiercely holding on to my location independence. So although now and then, of course, I love to speak at conferences and I love to meet people in person and so on. I'm very online driven in terms of, my own Facebook group and in terms of chatting to people. And obviously, like you too, it's incredible to be able to speak with people just via Skype or whatever from any part of the world.
And so what made you decide to become a podcaster? Was it also part of the networking plan, that way to get your name out there?
Well, it wasn't, I mean, it definitely wasn't part of the networking, but that's been sort of a side effect that I never realized, I guess, just chatting to people all around the world. But I started with blogging because my strength is writing. And as I've said a few times, I always wanted to write. And that was something I started with. So initially it was a travel blog, personal wanderings. And then I gradually sort of built a business website around that. Then I added video, which was a disaster at the start. I was so bad and I was so perfectionist about correcting it, and it came across so unnaturally and it was terrible. And then I sort of developed that and felt more comfortable with it. And then podcasting, I think, is just so convenient for the listener as well. It's on the go, it's on demand. You can listen while you're doing the dishes, while you're going for a walk, on the commute. And I also have been immersing myself in podcasts the last couple of years too. So I just felt like it was a natural step. And as it turns out, I really enjoy just talking. So it works quite well. You literally turn on the microphone, you chat about a topic, and then hopefully people can connect and resonate and learn something. So
well, you're very good at
I've really enjoyed. Oh, I'm good at talking. Thank you. Maybe too good sometimes, but thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes, I listened to every episode. I was actually last week, I went to California to take my son to Legoland. And on the flight, I just listened to your episodes just to get to
Oh,
know you a little
amazing.
bit better.
That means so much to me because obviously it's always a risk when you put yourself out there and you just don't know what people will think. And I only just started a few months ago in December. It was a goal for me in 2018, and I just managed to do it in time before the year ended. But again, yeah, I'm enjoying it, and hopefully it'll be a good sort of piece of the puzzle, really, just letting people connect in a different way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really good. I really enjoy it.
Thank you.
And how do you come up with the topics for your podcast episodes? I'm really impressed with that because I'm interviewing people because it's my lack of ability to come up with topics. So that's why I'm like, I'll just interview people because I'm not very good at just talking about ideas or my thoughts. So I'm really impressed that you can do that. So how do you come up with these topics?
Well, I have to say, first of all, it's incredible that you interview people and you reach out to people. Again, that's my favorite piece of talking to people. And a lot of people say I'll only listen to interview podcasts because it's much more interesting to hear a couple of people talking than it is to hear one person. So I wouldn't put yourself down. I think it's an amazing thing, and you're getting different people coming on all the time, different guests and so on. And it's also a bit of practice, isn't it? Once you feel more confident, then you can add something to it. But funnily enough, I've just done a content strategy challenge in my Facebook group, and that's what we did. So we helped everybody plan a content calendar for the business, really, across your different channels. So it's thinking about who are you, if you have a business, maybe you're just podcasting for fun, but if you have a business, who are your clients? What are they interested in? What do they want to know? What do they need to know? And then on the other side, what are my beliefs, my bigger mission, my brand, what I want to stand for, and then finding content that kind of sits between those two, and then think about how that translates into your different like social media channels, for example, and podcasts. So for me, it's things that my clients or people in my Facebook group need help with, or things I'm experiencing myself, maybe in my own business, or that I experienced when I went through the transition and I started building my business. Things that I believe in, sort of this big idea of reimagining success, which is the name of the podcast. And then I now have a theme for every week or a topic at least for every week in my business. So I'll actually do, videos and blog posts and podcasts in 1 week will all be around the same theme. So it just makes it a lot easier to, to turn on the microphone and know, okay, the topic for this week is how to create consistent content for your blog or for your business or something. And that just makes it a lot easier to then talk about obviously those themes. And hopefully it builds sort of a coherent picture and understanding in the minds of the listeners and the readers as well.
Sounds like you've got a lot going on in your life. So how do you make time to juggle your life? For instance, like you published a book recently, right?
Yes,
called
yeah.
Leaving the Corporate Lifestyle.
Leaving the corporate 9 to 5, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's a great question.
Oh, go ahead.
No,
sorry, go ahead.
No, just because, as you say, it's funny enough that a client just this week said there aren't enough hours a week, and I was like, I know, but the problem is that we all have the same amount of hours, and that's not actually going to change. It's not going to increase. So it's really about what we choose to do with them. And specifically, obviously I launched the podcast, I had the book, and I also launched my first group program last year. And I was absolutely thrilled to actually get those three things off the ground. But when I started the year, I had the 3 goals in mind to do right away, foolishly. So one of the things is you can do a lot of things, but you can't do them all in one go. So I had to prioritize. I launched the group program in February. That was my priority. And then the book came sort of after the summer. It did take a long time to get the discipline to finish it. But in the end, I was like, okay, my birthday, October, that's when it's going out. And then the same for the podcast. Then I was like, well, I said I'd do it this year, so I have to do it by December. And I did it by, literally by the middle of December. So it was sort of blocking, a quarter almost per goal. But more generally, I think what I try to do and what I advise people to do is start with a big picture. And that's the whole reimagining success. So what are your priorities? For me, I had to understand I've always wanted to be a writer. I really want to get this book out there. That's important to me. The group program is really important because I've been doing one-on-one and I'm running out of time again, and I think there's so much material that I could put into a membership site. The group members could really benefit from each other and so on. So the big picture for me was really clear on why I want to work on these projects, for example. And then more practically, you need to then look at your week and make sure that your day-to-day actions you're taking actually align with those priorities, because it's all very well to say I want to be a writer, I want to publish a book, and then I look at my calendar, I'm like, but at no point in my week am I writing or working on the book, because I'm just emailing or talking to people or whatever. So the one step is the big picture, understand what your priorities are, and then the second is really every week look at your calendar and then be ruthless, learn to say no and get rid of the stuff. Of course, there are things, especially in the short term, that you have to do, and things that aren't so sexy, like accounting and admin, and yes, some emails. But the goal is to get more and more closer and closer to your big picture and what your priorities are, and try to filter out, sort of get rid of all that other stuff that just isn't moving you forwards towards your goals.
And then, of course, you've also make time for like taking little ventures, like you're getting your sailing license. And
yeah. And I'm glad you
yeah,
mentioned that, because actually, again, the big belief I have is that it shouldn't all be around business. And it's so easy to get caught up, even after you've left the corporate 9 to 5. A lot of us get caught up in sort of the entrepreneurial hustle, and we have to work and launch this program and podcast and book. And although I did those, I'm especially proud that I was able to prioritize other things. So I always go on about the importance of well-being and your family and your relationships and so on, and then also just your passions and fun things. So sailing, again, is something I've always loved. I love being out in nature and out in the ocean, and it's something that I have literally had on my bucket list for 20 years to get my license. So I managed to prioritize first a week in May and then another week, I think, in September last year. So I did a sort of crew course first, and then the second one was the day skipper, it's called. So that was 2 weeks of being out on the sea and meeting exciting people and learning a new skill and so on. So that's definitely another piece of the puzzle, is making sure it's not all work and no play. So making sure you're also prioritizing, again, the fresh air and family and exercise and nutritious cooking, but also the fun stuff that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with any goals. Just enjoy something random, like learn to play the ukulele I did a few years ago, or go on a camping trip, or just head off on your bike, or whatever it is that you enjoy.
Do you have anything else on your bucket list other than you got your sailing license? So
I have a lot, because I actually, during that sabbatical, I wrote 100 things to do before I die. And initially that was such a key part of my exploration. It was after many years of, I think, being a bit too comfortable and boring and like just kind of doing lovely things but nothing really stretching me. So seeing friends, going to work, I wrote this long list, and the first few years it was crucial for me. I really let it guide me. I wanted to go to 2 new countries every year. I wanted to tick off at least 2 things from the list every year. I have to admit that I think partly because I've embraced that kind of approach now, I don't refer back to it as often. But I do check in now and then. And the day skipper was one. There was a little one that was to go back to York in the north of England, a bit randomly, to go to the Viking Museum that I loved when I was little. And I did that with my sister and her family a few months ago. So yeah, I definitely check in. And a lot of them are travel related. But it's a fun thing to check in on now and then. But again, I think I don't refer back to it as much, because in a way I've done a lot of the things I want to do. There's still so much more I want to do, but I'm also trying to enjoy the moment and not just keep rushing straight to the next goal on the list as well.
And so what is one important advice you would like to give people who are seeking to build a business?
I would say business related. Obviously it depends so much where you are. So if you're not even sure what you want to do, then the first step would be, as we said, explore, go out of your comfort zone, meet people, travel if you can, read, just do something different and give yourself that time. Be patient with yourself and just have fun and sort of dream big before you start narrowing down your options. If you actually want to start to build a business, or you have started, my advice would be a bit different, which would be to get started now with building an audience. So we talked a little bit about networking and podcasting and so on. But the reality is, we put up a website and think, ta-da, that's the business now.
No,
and really
it
takes time. Exactly. So, you're never going to be ready, and it's always going to be a bit uncomfortable to put yourself out there. But you need to start sooner rather than later, because, for me, when I suddenly decide, oh, I'm going to be a coach, the world doesn't suddenly go, oh, great, Anna's an amazing coach. Do you want to work with you? Because the world, or the small part of my world, knew me as a digital marketing expert. So it takes a lot of time if you want to change into a different direction, to build your credibility, to attract the right kind of audience, to build that trust with those people and so on. So my big advice would be just get started now, get started before you're ready, start sooner rather than later. And then you can refine, you'll learn, you'll get more confidence, you'll grow and so on. But, if you don't start now, you're just delaying the results even more. So try to get out of your comfort zone, put out a blog post, do something, and then keep learning and keep doing it.
Definitely, and reach out to people who will support your business or blog or podcast.
Well, that's massive, to have that community around you, whether it's, friends or strangers, online, offline, a coach, whatever it takes, but definitely surround yourself with people who will support you. It could be, you need cheerleaders who are just going to encourage you. You need mentors who can actually guide you and support you more concretely in the business. You need people who remind you to take a break now and then. So, you need all these different roles in your life to support you with the business.
Definitely. So what are 5 resources, they can be books, websites, or documentaries, that you recommend for people who want to reimagine their success?
5 resources. So I was thinking, I have 3 books in mind that I read when I was traveling. So one is The Art of Nonconformity by Chris Guillebeau. And he was someone I followed again at the beginning, in the early days, before I even knew what I was doing. He's written lots of books and I think they're all worth reading, but he started by traveling to every country in the world and wrote a blog on that. But his book, The Art of Nonconformity, for me, it just challenged my view on the standard path of school, college, work, and so on. He sort of put forward the advantages of not necessarily going to university and learning in a different way. So that was a big one for me. The second one is Finding Your North Star by Martha Beck. Finding Your North Star, and that's interesting too. She was sort of a high-powered, I think, lawyer. Sorry, it was a while ago since I read it, but her child was born with Down syndrome, and everyone around her was like, "Oh, this is never going to work," and it sort of ruined your life and so on. And she completely, obviously, thank goodness, disagreed with that and reimagined her life essentially around this, and realized that what she was working on at the time wasn't so meaningful, and sort of reshifted her priorities. And then the third book would be The Icarus Deception by Seth Godin. He writes lots of marketing books, but this one in particular talks about the myth of Icarus. If you're familiar with Greek mythology, I always loved Greek mythology when I was little, but Icarus flies too high to the sun, and he has these wings that are sort of stuck on with wax, and then the wax melts and he falls down into the sea and dies. Very sad. But the big lesson there that we hear is, you shouldn't strive to be too much, and who do you think you are, trying to have all these big goals, and you need to be smaller. And Seth Godin reminds us that actually the other part of that lesson is you shouldn't fly too low, because if you fly too low, then Icarus would have died anyway, because the salt water and so on would have melted the wax, and he would have also fallen into the sea. So it's just, I found that a really nice reminder that, who are you not to try to do something incredible, and why should someone else do it and not you, and why should you keep yourself playing small? So just to be a bit more open and confident, and to go for your big dreams, really. So those are 3 books. And then the final 2, I'd say, if I can be cheeky, I'd say my Facebook group, One Step Outside, because again, we talked about the importance of a community. So having those people, there's like-minded people in there who are looking at reimagining success, starting their businesses, super supportive of each other, and I do free training sessions and so on in there. And of course, the Reimagining Success podcast. So if you do like what you hear a little bit, and hopefully that Vivienne has appreciated the different topics I'm covering, then that's a good place again to listen while you're on the plane to San Diego, or while you're doing the dishes, or whatever it is. So it's always a good podcast, and I think that's a great way to get some additional inspiration and some concrete tips as well.
Yes, I agree. The last resource is definitely one of the best.
Thank you.
Okay, so what is one of the things that you do to unwind at the end of the day?
So as I said at the beginning, I've recently moved into a new flat. So right now I'm not doing a whole lot of unwinding, I have to say, because there's a lot we need to do. But my basic routine at the moment, at least, is that I stop work when my boyfriend comes home, and then cook a nice dinner. And actually, speaking of Vikings, we're enjoying the Viking series on Amazon at the moment. So we tend to snuggle down on the couch and watch Vikings. It's quite a nice sort of escape from the working day, and then go to bed pretty early, to be honest. And then I'm ready to go the next day again.
Yeah, it's always so easy to find something on Amazon or on Netflix and just relax at the end of the day. So the last question I have for you is, for passion or money?
What a question.
I know.
So I'm sure I'm going to be cheating now and say, obviously, it depends and there's more things and so on. But my answer would be, and again, I did a challenge on this in my Facebook group a few months ago. I don't know if you've heard of Ikigai, the Japanese concept. It's from an Okinawa, Japanese island. And it's this Venn diagram where they actually say that your Ikigai, which is your reason for getting out of bed in the morning, is at the center of your passion and money, yes, but also your skills and the impact you're making in the world. So ideally, and I think that's where the really fulfilling, sustainable, incredible work, business, whatever is, it intersects where you're using the things you're good at, you're working in an area that you're excited about, that you're passionate about, you're making a meaningful contribution to the world, but also, yes, importantly, you need to be earning money. If I'm going to be a bit more sort of direct in terms of my answer, I'd say that up to a certain basic level, it would be money, because without that, you're going to be, putting your family at risk. And, there's a certain level of money we do need to survive. So we can't ignore that and be all sort of idealistic. But if you know Maslow's hierarchy of needs, there's that kind of safety, security at the bottom. Once you have that, then we're very lucky, very fortunate to be in a position to be able to focus on higher goals like fulfillment and belonging and so on. So I think, of course, and in the context of leaving your job, make sure that you have an understanding of what money you have and don't have, save more, cut down your expenses and so on. But then as long as you have, most of us are very lucky, perhaps in Northern Europe, the US, that we're not going to be thrown out onto the street and have no job. So if we are lucky to be in that position, I think we can afford to be a bit more creative and bold in our choices in terms of what we career wise and business wise. And to be honest, we think that having your own business is riskier and you can't earn as much doing freelance work and so on. And that's not necessarily true. So I think we need to sort of reframe and think that actually maybe we can have both.
Yes, I think a lot of people are in that direction where they feel that they can have both. It just takes a lot of work.
It does take work, but is it worth it? I think we're still youngish and we're going to have a long life ahead of us. I think it's worth that. Again, we can't necessarily go from one day to the next to being multimillionaires if that's what we want to be in our dream job, but we can definitely get closer to it. And even with the Ikigai, I don't think it's about going to that center of the diagram tomorrow. It's just about being aware that, okay, right now I'm using my skills, I'm earning money, but I'm really not passionate about my work. What could I do to get closer to something I'm interested in, even if it's volunteering or reading a book or going on a course or taking a holiday? It doesn't have to be completely quitting your job and so on. So I would never necessarily push someone in that direction. It's all up to you, but I would just open your mind to what's possible and then be patient and, yes, put in the hard work, get the support you need, and take your one step.
Well, thank you, Anna, for coming on my show. It was a pleasure to have you. Hopefully we'll get to do this again. I would love to have you on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it was really insightful and to finally get to talk to you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening to my podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode and gained some helpful advice on how to reimagine your success. I want to thank Anna for coming on my podcast and telling her inspiring personal story and how she created her own opportunities to have more freedom and flexibility. If you'd like to go over what we covered today on my podcast, visit joliepagel.com/podcast. You can subscribe to my podcast on SoundCloud, Apple Podcast, and Spotify. If you've enjoyed this episode and my previous episodes, please leave me a 5-star rating and hopefully a stellar review. I would so appreciate it. Tell me your takeaway from today's show or what you would like to hear in the future. You can message me at byjoliepagel on Instagram or email me at vivian@joliepagel.com. All of this info will be in the show notes. Please do share this podcast with your family, friends, and entrepreneurs, because life is about sharing. Until next time.